Hey, you guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mason. I'm coming to you from Canada. I'm in British Columbia. Let's check out this video, how Trump's tariffs accidentally made Canada a trading superpower. There's certainly going to be ripples and waves from Trump's policies that are going to last a very, very long time. He hasn't just disrupted the trade between Canada and the US. He's also seriously and irreparably damaged our two nations' relationship, which is really, really sad. There's so many fantastic Americans. I think the best of America still exists. It's just with the leader in the White House right now. It's not ideal. Let's see what he's got to say.
And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars, we don't need their lumber, we don't need their energy, we don't need anything from Canada.
Of course, in the end, America's going to lose from America trade actions.
They treated us very badly until recently. Now they're treating us very nicely.
71% of Canadian consumers say they intend to buy fewer American products this year. The U.S. economy could lose up to 0.3% of its GDP.
Something fascinating is unfolding in global trade that could reshape North America's economic future. When the US imposed 35% tariffs on Canadian goods, it triggered something economists call trade diversion, and the numbers tell a story that neither country fully anticipated. Here's what the data shows. In 18 months, Canada's trade patterns shifted dramatically. The European Union increased imports from Canada by 26%. That's $34 billion in redirected business. The UK boosted Canadian imports by 15.7% to $2.58 billion. Meanwhile, Japan, Australia and Singapore are accessing Canadian resources through the CPTPP trade agreement. But here's the complexity economists are watching. Canada now has preferential trade access to 1.2 billion consumers across 3 continents, while the US maintains its strongest ties with Mexico and some bilateral agreements. This isn't just about survival. It's about how trade wars create unintended consequences that reshape entire economic relationships. The question isn't whether Canada is winning or America is losing. It's about understanding how tariff policies create ripple effects that neither country fully controls. Here's what's really happening behind the headlines. When President Trump announced 35% tariffs on Canadian products, he was following a classic protectionist playbook: raise costs on foreign goods to protect domestic industries. The economic theory is straightforward: make imports expensive enough and consumers will buy local alternatives. But trade relationships aren't that simple. Canada had spent decades.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly simple way to look at it. Yes, when you break it down, that is the crux of it, but
building what economists call institutional trade infrastructure, membership in multiple trade blocs that could be activated when needed. While the US was renegotiating or withdrawing from agreements, Canada was quietly joining them. The 35% tariff means American consumers pay an additional $2,400 per household annually, according to economic estimates. That's not just a number, it's real money coming out of American families' budgets for everything from energy to food products. Here's where it gets economically interesting. Tariffs don't just punish the
tariff wars, yeah, they just hurt everybody.
Exporting country, they create what economists call welfare losses for the importing country too. When Canadian exporters face a 35% barrier to US markets, they don't just disappear, they find other customers. Often customers willing to pay competitive prices without the tariff penalty. The result? Americans pay more for Canadian goods they still need, while Canadian producers diversify their customer base. It's a textbook example of how trade wars often hurt both sides, just in different ways. The Trans-Pacific Partnership tells one of the most interesting stories in modern trade policy. Originally designed by the Obama administration as America's strategy to dominate Pacific trade and provide an alternative to Chinese influence, the TPP was meant to be America's economic anchor in Asia. Then came 2017. President Trump withdrew the US from TPP negotiations, calling it a bad deal. But here's what economists found fascinating. The other 11 countries didn't abandon the framework. They restructured it as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, essentially the same deal, minus America. Canada became a founding member of this club that now includes Australia, Brunei, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam. The economic impact has been measurable. Canadian merchandise trade with CPTPP economies grew significantly between 2019 to 23. But let's be precise about what this means. Canada now has preferential access to 500 million consumers across the Pacific, but this comes with obligations too. CPTPP requires regulatory harmonization, labor standards, and environmental commitments. It's not just about tariff-free access. it's about economic integration. The irony is striking. America designed the blueprint for Asian economic integration, then handed that blueprint to its competitors. Whether this was strategically wise depends entirely on your perspective and priorities. CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between Canada and the European Union.
All I can say is America, isolationism, America first, and ultimately America alone.
Presents something genuinely unprecedented in trade policy. It's one of the most comprehensive trade agreements ever negotiated, covering not just goods but services, investment and regulatory cooperation. The numbers are significant. CETA helped increase EU goods exports to Canada by 26, supporting an estimated 700,000 European jobs. That's 70,000 more jobs than before the agreement took effect. For European small and medium enterprises, the impact was even more pronounced. 44% more now export to Canada than before CETA. Here's what makes this economically interesting. CETA eliminates duties on 99% of all tariff lines between Canada and the EU. While Canadian goods face escalating US tariffs, they enter European markets essentially tariff-free. From a pure economic efficiency standpoint, this creates obvious incentives for Canadian exporters. The challenge for American policymakers is that CETA represents exactly the kind of deep economic integration that the US has traditionally championed. Europe and Canada built the type of comprehensive trade relationship that America pioneered with NAFTA. Just without America at the table, Brexit created an interesting economic puzzle. How does a country that just left the world's largest trade bloc maintain global trade relationships? The answer reveals something important about modern trade architecture. On July 16, 2023, the UK signed an accession protocol to join CPTPP. This wasn't just about Britain joining an Asian trade bloc. It was about creating a bridge between post-Brexit Britain and global markets, with Canada playing a crucial connecting role. And the results came quickly. In 2024, the UK reported a 15.7% increase in imports from Canada, reaching $2.58 billion, and making Canada the UK's 16th largest trading partner. Here's the strategic significance. Canada now sits at the intersection of three major trade relationships: CPTPP for Asia-Pacific access, CETA for European markets, and enhanced agreements with post-Brexit Britain. The US, by comparison, has USMCA with Mexico and Canada, plus various bilateral agreements. This isn't necessarily about one country winning over another. It's about how global trade architecture is evolving and how different countries are positioning themselves within that architecture. But here's where economic theory meets business reality. When companies face a 35% tariff barrier, they don't just absorb the cost, they restructure their entire operations. Canadian energy companies are signing long-term contracts with Asian buyers. The technology firms are establishing European headquarters. Manufacturers are retooling production lines for non-American specifications. This is what economists call sunk costs in action. Once a Canadian company invests millions in serving European markets, they don't abandon that investment when tariff policies change. These aren't temporary pivots, they're permanent structural shifts. The unintended consequence? Tariffs, designed to bring production back to America, might permanently redirect it to America's competitors. When your largest supplier starts prioritizing other customers, you don't get lower prices, you get supply constraints. Commerce Secretary Lutnick has hinted at possible tariff agreements with Canada, suggesting Washington recognizes the problem. But here's the economic reality. CETA phases out all tariffs on industrial products between the EU and Canada within 7 years. Canadian businesses now face a simple choice: pay escalating US tariffs or access 450 million European consumers tariff-free. From a business perspective, that calculation isn't difficult. This represents something economists have long predicted. Once trade relationships are disrupted, they don't easily return to their original patterns. Every month these tariffs remain, alternative supply chains become more entrenched, alternative partnerships become more valuable, and the path back becomes more expensive. But the broader question isn't whether Canada is winning or America is losing. It's whether unilateral trade policies can achieve their intended goals in an interconnected global economy. The answer is unfolding in real time.
Very interesting stuff. I think I said earlier in the video that it's irreparable damage to the relationship between the two countries, but we also see from this video that, you know, Trump's tariffs, they have permanently changed and created new trading initiatives, new trading partners for Canada. So Canada's pivoting away from the US. The US listen, we're in such close proximity. We have so much history. Like, that relationship is always going to be there. But Canada's been under the shadow of the U.S., under the thumb of the U.S. And frankly, I think we should definitely continue pivoting away, finding new trade agreements, gaining access to global markets. And yeah, Trump, he can't just go back on his word now. He can't just go back, and renegotiate a deal that's going to work for him. And yeah, trade wars, tariff wars, they're a tool. It's just the way that Trump is using them, combined with his incendiary rhetoric and his absolute unpredictability, creates so much anxiety in the markets that, I don't know. It's crazy. Certainly I wasn't thinking back to his first term. It wasn't this crazy, I don't think. I don't know. Hope y'all are doing great, though. Let me know in the comments where you're from, your thoughts on the video. If you'd like to support the channel, the easiest way to do it is like, subscribe, comment down below, and I really appreciate it. The hilarious thing has been Mega reacts to rising Trump economy prices. Also seeing certain, people losing their jobs in the States because of industries having to pivot and change due to this trade war and the trade wars. It's been exhausting, but yeah. Proud to be a Canadian. I think Canada's doing fine. We got a lot of things we can work on, a lot of problems, a lot of issues, like a lot of countries. We're in a continually interconnected and global world and market, and trade is going to reflect that. We're more cosmopolitan, I think, the world than it's ever been. And yeah, to the frontier we go. All right, peace.